All right, so you should have divided your paper into 4 boxes like we have done in the past. Now, we should be pretty good at drawing 2 of our objects. They've all stayed the same. You need to, again, create those on your paper. There should be overlapping because we've practiced this. You can have the bucket on it. I'm drawing them quick. You should have enough that you can add paint or color to it because we're going to be doing a couple different things with this. I'm going to do all 4. If we don't finish, you should be able to finish in time. But if you don't finish for whatever reason, we will have time to work on this next class as well. I have my red apple, my green apple, and my bucket here. Okay, so here are my 4 sketches. They're kind of quick, they're very simple, right? It's not really the idea of the sketch I want you to be spending time on today again. I want you to be doing the paint part of it. Now, the paper that I've given you has a little bit of a texture to it. It is a watercolor paper. Watercolor paper comes in 2 kinds. There is hot press and cold press. This is considered cold press, and that's why there are ridges in it. It's pressed just flat like paper so we can use it. If it was hot press, it'd be like using an iron on a piece of paper, and then it would be super smooth. That's not always good for watercolor because then the water runs everywhere, okay? So we want it to stop and get stuck in places. So that's why watercolor typically has a texture to it. So when we do watercolor, who can tell me what are some of the things I might need to start? Noah?
Need enough water.
Okay? Because that activates my paint. What else?
You need the paint.
I need the paint. Okay? Or the materials that are going to be used for paint. What else, Nicholas?
Brush.
Not a paintbrush. Paintbrush. I also happen to have a paint palette with me because if I want to make some new colors, I can do that. And I'm going to show you one new color that you all have to practice making. Okay? So I've gotten my paints. Now, when you are working on this today with the people at your table, you're probably going to have to share a couple things. Okay? So if someone's using the watercolor paints, maybe you can be working with the crayons because we're going to try a couple things. I am going to show you what wet on wet means. And that means that you're using a lot of water at the same time. Okay? We're not waiting for it to dry to come back to it, which is kind of something that we need to think about with watercolor. And hopefully one of you could give me the reason why we need to wait with watercolor. Does anybody have any ideas of what they did with watercolor when they were in elementary school? Any rules you had to follow or things you remember? Painting with it. So I'm going to start here. Now this paper isn't really thick. It's still pretty thin. So if you get it super soaking wet, it is going to put a hole in it. And if you scrub your brush back and forth, that will put a hole in your paper also. So those are things that we want to try to avoid. Now watercolor, if you notice this, I've kind of created a puddle in my paint. And I want to fill in. I don't want it so dark. Do you see how light my colors are? The lighter the better. Watercolor is about putting one layer on, letting it dry, going back for another layer, letting it dry, going back for another layer. Okay? So wet on wet is the idea that, I should maybe do it with my bottom. So my bucket is purple. You can change your colors if you need to. I'm going to add some water to my blue and to my purple paints. And wet on wet is where I'm taking one color and I'm getting it the whole area wet. I'm going to try to avoid my red apple here. And then I'm directly adding a second color into it so that it starts to blend and wiggle around. Okay? What would happen if my blue and purple touches my red paint? Who remembers?
Mix with the red?
They're going to run together, okay? It's sort of like, I think in nature a little bit, like water wants to find each other. They want to become buddies. So like if you get them too close, they're just going to mush together. Do you see how you can't really see the line between the blue and purple anymore? They're all mixed together. It all flows together, okay? So that is wet on wet. I can kind of wiggle that around, let it dry. It looks shiny while it is wet. Once it dries, it will look kind of matte or kind of dusty or dull looking. Does that make sense? Okay. So you need to, in one area of your paper, you need to combine colors so that you're using two colors that are wet at the same time, so they create a new color. Okay? If you look at my board, it says draw two fruit from your desk. The first thing you need to do says wet on wet. Do you all know what I just did for wet on wet? That's part of your assignment. I need to be able to see that. Okay, so now the next one that I want to do is show value or layers. When I do watercolor, when it's this type of watercolor, this apple I did first down here so that I could show this to you. So I did one and I let it dry, and then I moved to a different box to keep working. I can go back with the red here, and I can add a layer to it. And I didn't really get my brush very, very wet. It's just a little bit wet. Do you see how the red paint on this apple is not wiggling around much? I kind of scraped off the water, went into my puddle of water, and put it right on. Do you see how I have most of the apple is a light pink, and then where I've added a layer, it becomes darker? Okay, that's what you need to do. In watercolor, like watercolorists, people who do this all the time, this apple might have 5, 6, 7 layers. If you can get 2 or 3 today, that would be great. Okay? I'm going to do my bucket again, and I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to show you something else. Let's see if I can. So we're just going to kind of run that down. Okay. When you are doing, I want you to practice the color pencils and the crayon part of this, okay? So I don't have one of these for each table, unfortunately, so we're going to have to kind of share. Maybe we'll have some, I don't know, I'll brainstorm it up as I'm working. So when I do my apple, when I drew my apple on that other piece of paper the other day, where's red? Oh, there it is. It's very smushed. I'm going to start with my red, and I'm going to fill it in. Now my red is overlapping. It doesn't matter the order of my fruit and stuff. I'm going to fill this in. I'm going to leave a little bit of space because I'm going to come back with my pink, because remember I want a little bit of blending in here and combining of colors. So here I'm making the layers right away with the crayon pieces, with the oil base or the water-based oil crayons. So I'm filling this in. I've got sort of a highlight there. I don't want orange anymore. I do want a little bit of black to give myself some shadows on here and create my stem, okay? You can do this also with the other fruit, permitting time, okay? Hopefully you will get to do more than just one. I will do sort of the violet bottom of this, which is pretty close to that red, so I'm going to want to blend a little bit of color with this guy also. Is there, like, here's a purple. Ooh. So I'm going to add some purple here, blend that together, okay? What is going to, for this step, along with, I'm going to do watercolors, really, the pencils as well, really quick for you too. When you do this, all you do is you get a wet brush, you keep a little bit of water in it, and you carefully start to blend the paint together. Can I have one of you, Tommy or Zach, will one of you rip a piece of paper towel and bring it here for me? Our videographer today is going to make us dizzy when we watch this. If you feel like, I feel like I have too much water on here, so I want to dab a little bit up because I don't want it to just run everywhere. I want to be able to sort of mush these colors around with my brush. So if you can see, it kind of starts to smooth it out a little bit. After that dries, if I feel like I need to do some more, I can go back. Here I'm blending these colors together. You can kind of get it to move like that. Again, if it feels like, whoa, I got way too much water, I can go back in and I can dab it up. I still got a lot on that blue. So do you kind of see what I did with that apple on the bottom? I used the crayons. I can go back with that and dab some, and it kind of play with it. So some of this I want you to experiment a little bit with and see how it works. Now the watercolor pencils work the same way. If you're noticing, with all these parts, we're going to do the water today with things, and then next class we're going to do the acrylics. You guys have done a lot of this already. You probably just don't have names for it, or you maybe don't remember specifics. But you have. What I want you to start to be thinking about when you paint is we are not just filling in a coloring worksheet. So if I need red paint, I'm going to go find the red and only use red. You need to start layering your colors. You need to start showing value in your colors. And those are the types of things I'm going to be looking for. So if I have my red on my apple here, I'm going to fill it in with my pencil. I can go back and I can find, it's kind of a gray. I want to add the gray for my value on here because I'm not really finding the right color. I maybe need to find a light pink of some kind. Some shadows here. Where's pink? I'm going to fill in with a little bit of pink. Go back with my red. There's two different kinds. Actually, 3 different kinds of watercolor pencils back there, so it doesn't matter which one you try, but you should try to experiment with one of them. Same thing's going to happen. These will probably work a little bit easy. See, yeah, this is way easier. These get pretty dark and obviously very bright, which is nice. If I want to pull some color off, I can add some white color, add just clear water. I can also dab some of this off if I feel like it's too much. And I can blend. Now say I wanted to take some of that extra and I want to make this apple red also just to see what happens. So you can take some of that extra color and you can move it around. Now, there was a lot of water on here, and as I dabbed on here, this paper is starting to get a little, have you ever gotten paper too wet and then it puts a hole in it, kind of starts to rub off, almost like flake off? So just be careful with that. Now, if I were to, you can combine these. So like say I want to do this green, this apple is red down here, and I want to come back and add a little bit of pencil down here to it. I can go back over it with the pencil, and I can create layers that way as well. So I would like you to try a couple of these techniques on the same one.